Welcome to Intuitive Astrology with Molly McCord. Thank you so much for joining me today, as this is a Monday podcast episode where we focus on a particular astrological topic or theme. And today we're going to discuss the soul significance of Neptune in Aries, specifically here in April 2026, as Neptune now begins to separate more fully from Saturn. Saturn and Neptune have been in an ongoing conjunction for a year, as both have entered into Aries, then retrograded back into Pisces, then fully entered Aries. And during that span of time, Saturn and Neptune have been feeling the influence of each other. Now, they do have an ongoing conjunction cycle where they are conjunct every 36 or 37 years. And each time they are conjunct, something important is brought into our consciousness that shapes and evolves humanity in an important way. And this particular dance that they've been doing together through Pisces and into Aries is important because of how their exact conjunction was at 0 degrees, 44 minutes of Aries back on February 20th, 2026. And there was something seated in our consciousness that is now going to be coming into fruition, growing and developing over the next 30 years. At least. And that's because Saturn began this brand new journey here in Aries, conjunct Neptune, and the Saturn cycle lasts about 30 years. And this conjunction occurring at 0 degrees of Aries, the very, very beginning of the full zodiac wheel, is especially important for the beginnings it's bringing to the collective, to the world, and to our own consciousness. So there's that part of it. But what I want to look at in today's show is the fact that here in April 2026, Saturn is now moving ahead, separating away from Neptune. They are at 5 degrees of separation now. Saturn will continue forward in Aries. Both planets are going to retrograde back in earlier Aries degree points at the end of 2026. But they will be 6 degrees apart. So their exact conjunction is complete. And that means that as they separate and create more space between each other, there's going to be more of a full effect of each planet. So Saturn moves more fully into Aries. Saturn strengthens as it moves forward into the second decan of Aries. And then we have this Neptune still moving slowly in Aries, but no longer under the effects of Saturn. And so what I want to discuss is why this is significant for us right now, because now Neptune is going to be more fully expressed, alive, and in its true essence in the early degrees of Aries, moving to only 4 degrees of Aries in 2026, and then retrograding back to 1 degree, 37 minutes of Aries by the end of 2026. So what this means is that now Neptune has more room and space to be in its full self, its full energetic expression. And I think it's going to come alive at a whole new level within us now that Saturn is no longer blocking or restricting what Neptune is here to guide us through. And I wanted to reference 3 previous cycles in history where we had Neptune in Aries energies to identify the key themes that are coming up for us now during this time on the planet. But I'm also feeling that part of what is arising is that you could be having some past life memories, recalls, and intuitive downloads around other Neptune in Aries time periods that your soul took a body in. And that's important to note because Neptune moves through the full zodiac wheel every 165 years. So it takes 165 years for Neptune to go through all 12 signs. It spends about 13 to 14 years in each zodiac sign. So that means that, of course, every lifetime you're not going to have a Neptune in Aries experience. But here we all are having this time together on the planet, and I do feel that it's going to draw upon previous lifetimes, energies, and soul experiences for you that you are looking to elevate and reset in this lifetime. And so I'm going to discuss these 3 periods of time where we had Neptune in Aries, and if one resonates with you or if the themes feel especially relevant, there could be something here that is whispering to you for understanding around what you're resetting, newly beginning, and spiritually integrating now. And it's also helpful to identify the patterns of each cycle. And so the core patterns of Neptune and Aries, let's just get right to it here. The core patterns that emerge is that there's some part of our identity, which is Aries, that is being rebirthed. And this can happen, of course, at an individual level. This is where we are feeling renewed. Something about us is coming to the forefront in a fresh, whole new way, whole new level. This is a beginning point energy, and you could feel it in those Neptunian softer ways, meaning you don't logically understand it and you can't fully explain it even. It's a feeling, it's a sense that, wow, I feel different, and I can sense that it's this newness that's traveling with me and carrying me forward. Now, this also relates to how there can be rebirths at a collective level, whether you're looking at a collective cultural rebirth, a nation's rebirth, a country's rebirth, an organization's rebirth. All of that applies. So all of these core themes relate to multiple layers of energy and multiple groups. Now, the Neptune and Aries energy is also bringing forth inspired spiritual leadership. And so how can we trust who we are and what we need at a whole new level with emerging courage? Courage is here. You might feel that your spiritual guidance is directing you in a new way forward, that you're summoning courage at a new level of your being. There could be something here where you're understanding you're taking ownership and leadership over your life at a whole new level. And again, it could be hard to fully understand, but you can feel it. This is also a time when more people can feel divinely guided. That's also part of Neptune and Aries. You might sense that I don't know why I'm doing this. I just need to. I can feel this is aligned with my energy and who I am. I can also feel that a bigger power is moving me forward. This can also be validating of a new spiritual identity or a new sense of personal sovereignty that you're reclaiming. You might realize that you are fully ready to be in charge of your path and purpose. That's part of the Aries energy that's moving you forward. You could sense that there is now a rise in what you trust in yourself, that you've done a lot of healing work, and that in the previous cycle of Neptune and Pisces, there was so much closing out in terms of spiritual growth, healing, lessons, karma, things that needed to come to an end in this lifetime so that you could have this rebirth. And so this Neptune in Aries is moving you forward, asking you to trust yourself at a whole new level, be in full sovereignty over who you are and what you desire, and to really bring forward more of the spiritual warrior energy and maybe feel like it's easier to do so. Now, spiritual warrior doesn't mean you necessarily go to war. It could simply mean that you're standing in a pure truth. You are embodying more of your authenticity regardless of what's going on around you. And you also could sense that you are truly initiating a new timeline for yourself based on your own true energy. And that's part of where you might find you're standing strong in who you came here to be and what's opening up for you next. Now, I've done other podcast episodes for you discussing this Neptune in in Aries theme and the energetics it brings forward. So I didn't want to repeat myself too much by stating what I've already shared. Rather, I wanted to take this deeper into more of the significance this could have for you at a soul level through these 3 previous chapters in history of Neptune in Aries. And so the first one is going to go all the way back to the 16th century, specifically 1533 to 1548. And it's okay if you don't know your history or you don't even know what was going on at that time, as we're more focused on the bigger overarching energies and maybe something that came up for you or that you resonate with that explains what you're moving through now. And so I'm also seeing these as coexisting timelines, even that multi-dimensional experience of energetic themes from a previous phase in human history that now feels perhaps more strong or relevant for you now. So back in the 16th century, when Neptune was last in Aries, this was actually during the height of the Protestant Reformation. And so there was a lot of spiritual rebellion, upheaval, institutional change. The spiritual rebellion was breaking away from the established religious authority. And so that would be that Aries energy of I'm going to go my own way, go in my own direction. But of course, that also stirs up conflict and power struggles from those who don't support it, who don't approve. This could be the energy of tearing apart families, understanding that you have a different belief system or something else that calls to you that you have to trust and move towards. And this is where people were actually tapping into their own personal relationship with the divine. And that is very Neptune in Aries. That's the Aries independence saying, I will choose what is aligned for me, what I want to believe, and I'm going to do so on my own terms. So there was courage here to defy established systems, to say, no more, I don't want that. That isn't true for me. That isn't in alignment with what I believe. And so people risked their lives. They risked their livelihood for what they believed in. And this is very much about taking a stand and understanding, I want to explore this in my own way. I'm going to pioneer something here that matters to me. And I'm not concerned about stepping away from the status quo. I'm going to move forward on my own inner spiritual quest. And I don't need anyone else's permission to do so. This, of course, was a part of the big upheaval that challenged the Roman Catholic Church's hierarchy and power structure. And so this is how Neptune in Aries can show up, is that there is a powerful declaration from the individual that challenges what was previously accepted or working. This is also when Henry VIII broke away from the Catholic Church, which reshaped England's whole religious identity. Martin Luther also challenged the papal authority and said that the Pope is not the supreme authority over all Christians. So, of course, there's a lot of history here. There's a lot you could dig into if you wanted to, but I just wanted to provide an overarching understanding of the Neptune in Aries and how it was people's spiritual belief systems and desire to make their own choices that basically changed the world and that challenged what was in the name of one's spiritual identity. And so you might be sensing that at some level of your being right now. Neptune is going to be in Aries until 2039. So we're surely going to see these themes emerge around what the individual determines is accurate and true for them. Especially since we are now at a higher level of consciousness on the planet. We have hopefully, ideally, learned a lot to the point where we can make new choices and new conscious decisions around what we want. I feel that this Neptune in Aries is also going to support birthing more of the 5D energies and consciousness, as well as more of the new earth values that leads humanity forward. So that's one thing I'm seeing about this current cycle of Neptune in Aries that is just beginning, is that we have beautiful potentials here to lead the planet and move into new territory that humanity has never experienced, but it will call on these same core patterns and themes from other Neptune and Aries cycles. So the next time that Neptune was in Aries after the 16th century was in the late 17th century, very early 18th century, specifically 1697 to 1711. And this was a time when early enlightenment was beginning to emerge, where there were new ideas about human autonomy and who had the right to lead, new understandings of independence versus divine right. And of course, I'm trying to keep this high level because it would be easy to go into more specifics of each time period here. But the energy that was present and strong during this Neptune and Aries phase was growing through conflict and war. This was the War of Spanish Succession, which was about who would lead Spain. And it was during this conflict that European power was reshaped because of the dispute over the Spanish throne. And it lasted 13 years, basically during the whole Neptune in Aries journey. And so it brought up who has the right to be in charge, who has the right to lead, to be empowered, to own this territory. And it's through the conflict that nations defined themselves and that leaders emerged. And so that's also one expression of Aries, is what you go to war for, what you're fighting about, what is the conflict stirring up, and then does it escalate or does it diffuse? And something that's interesting here about each of these Neptune in Aries periods is that some are calmer, more passive, more idealistic. Other Neptune in Aries times are actually a bit more feisty and aggressive and included more battles. And so we have an interesting thing to consider here around what we fight for, what we feel we have to prove and go to battle over. Now, of course, you can look at this in literal practical terms, but I'm feeling this from a more energetic standpoint of the energy that moves you forward. What requires you to take a stand or to assert yourself? That is Aries. How do you show up and declare your personhood? Aries. How do you identify at an individual level what you want, what you need, what you're about, and then take actions that continue to demonstrate that? And so with this Neptune in Aries cycle, you could feel that some of the energies coming forward or arising for you are more battle prone. Maybe you had lifetimes where there was a lot of conflict and you were in survival mode. Maybe you've had lifetimes where that was the way to solve things, was to get on the battlefield or to grab a weapon. And so maybe that's coming up for you now to be more conscious of, what am I closing out here? What am I resetting? And what am I rebirthing at a whole new level of consciousness that allows me to maintain my sovereignty and my empowerment, but to also realize there's a different way. And I feel that's another main theme here of Neptune and Aries in our current cycle, is that we can see through these past cycles what has been implemented and used. But is that still reflective of our human consciousness now? Because there's openings here, very expansive openings that say there's another way forward. There's other ways to solve conflict or move through problems that don't result in the warlike aggressive tendencies that are very primal and raw. But that is part of the Aries expression. And so I feel like another thing that arises during each of these cycles is that humanity has the opportunity to collectively evolve in the Aries expressions and to be more aware of what you are intending and initiating. Initiation is also a strong Aries word. So during this cycle of Neptune and Aries, again, this one is 1697 to 1711, there was more conflict. There was a lot more discord and fighting. That means more extremes, more violence, more death. And then we can also contemplate, well, what emerged because of those power struggles? How was the individual defined or redefined? Because something that did happen during this period of time was that there was a shift from religion towards scientific thought. There were ideological changes here. That's because Isaac Newton's work also came forward during this Neptune in Aries phase. So again, you can always go into a deep dive and explore this even more. But if we look at it from the high level themes, we want to say, okay, well, what came from this? What was birthed? What was brought to the forefront that was new and different? And Isaac Newton's laws of motion, universal gravitation, mathematics, everything that was developed during that time, of course, was very influential and opened up many new areas of human thought and scientific exploration. So here we have one individual leading a whole new area of discovery and exploration that birthed new ideas about the human experience and our role in the universe. Now, the third period of time I want to look at here would be in the 19th century when Neptune was in Aries from 1861 until 1875. And this is, of course, most often identified with the American Civil War, which started in 1861 and lasted until 1865, and really dug into these key Neptune and Aries themes of identity, sovereignty, moral conviction, human rights, freedom, and even the soul of a nation. Who are we as a population, as a country? There was spiritual conflict here in the Civil War as both sides believed they were guided by a higher purpose. And so there were new spiritual movements that developed and were birthed as well during this time in that search for who am I now? Who are we now? There is a search for a higher self-identity. Neptune in Aries brings about, how am I connected to the divine? Am I connected to the divine? Or do I have to go through another institution or authority figure in order to have that connection? Well, Neptune in Aries says you are the connection. You are the source of the divine. And that is certainly a part of what we are contemplating and embodying now in this current cycle. But I feel too that every time Neptune is in Aries, there is a strong focus on religious leaders, spiritual leaders of any kind and of every kind, because that's what Neptune elevates. It brings in, where do we give our own spiritual authority outside of ourselves? Are we giving our power away to another whom we believe is more connected to the divine than our individual selves? And Neptune in Aries reroutes that back to you, says you are the source of divinity. You are your own connection to whatever you believe, be it religious, spiritual, energetic, or otherwise. So what do you believe that supports who you are now? And this is also where those who hold any kind of spiritual authority can feel like they are in battle or in war of some kind because their own role is being brought to the forefront. Neptune in Aries is active energy. It's no longer in that blind faith of Neptune and Pisces. There's a sense here of even challenging what has been taught or told in terms of belief systems, and to bring about new understandings that pertain to an individual journey or what one chooses for themselves. And so these themes here of Neptune and Aries are going to relate directly to collective shifts in our ideological viewpoints and belief systems. Sometimes it can be aggressive and assertive. Other times it could be more private and internal. But when we bring these energies here to the forefront of 2026 to 2039, more and more people are going to be searching for what is true for me, what aligns with what I want in my life and what I believe about myself in the world. What belief systems support me now? And I think it's interesting in our modern times where we we have access to all kinds of information 24/7. We can research or understand things. We can do any kind of cultural deep dive or be curious about any type of religion or faith and seek it out, seek to understand it. And as we do so, we come to understand, well, is this true for me? Is this how I want to live my life? Is this in alignment with my personal values? I also feel that more and more people have been through various stages of sampling or trying other belief systems, other religions and spiritual practices to determine what is correct for me. And so Neptune in Aries is going to bring that up at a much broader level, inviting people to seek and search to determine what is true for me now. This is also where we're going to see more and more people step away from old conditioning or programming that they're realizing they have outgrown or perhaps just don't resonate with. This is personal, of course, so it could be a huge span of reasons or understandings why someone is no longer aligning with a particular belief system. But I feel that in this current cycle of Neptune in Aries, there is going to be more expansion in our collective consciousness around what it means to have a human experience that can also be more loving, compassionate, elevated, and harmonious. That this is a new cycle birthing us spiritually into more embodied themes that we live from. Of course, that's not everybody, and it always comes back to the individual's choices and rights to choose what they believe, which isn't the case in multiple countries or places on the planet. But part of what Neptune in Aries is going to bring up for each of us is to look at what we are choosing and why. Why is this true for me? Why does this support me? Why is this aligned with who I am now? And I'm feeling like this also leads us into higher unity consciousness. I feel that's part of the energy rising here with Neptune and Aries is that we are collectively co-creating a new energy grid on the planet, and we are collectively co-creating new energetic imprints around how to live our spiritual ideologies and belief systems in a way that can be more uplifting, inspiring, and empowering without going to war or battle for belief systems. Now, I realize there's multiple things going on the planet right now that certainly don't demonstrate that at all. That's why I'm seeing this as a more elevated energy that relates to new earth values, 5D, even 7D themes of what it means to be a spiritually evolved human. And this Neptune and Aries cycle can certainly open us up more to what that looks like. And so let me just circle back here to that last cycle I was just discussing in the 19th century of Neptune and Aries from 1861 to 1875, where there were many innovations. In fact, this is when photography started to come about, which is Neptunian. There were also important literary contributions such as War and Peace, Great Expectations, Little Women, and more expansion of the arts and new techniques and expressions. Most notably, Claude Monet's work flourished during this Neptune and Aries period, where he developed his signature Impressionist style. Neptune seeks beauty, harmony, idealism, and imagination. And so here in Aries, you could come into deeper contact with your own skills and abilities, perhaps from other lifetimes or timelines, that now seems to flourish for you, that now seems to come alive and be something that you desire to create or experience again in this current timeline. So do pay attention to anything artistic, creative, or inspiring that catches your energy, that gives you that spark of life and gets you excited to try something new and different, because that can be part of this Neptune and Aries signature. You could be reconnecting with those exact same talents and abilities from another timeline as they merge here and light you up. There could also be a sense that something just comes about easily for you. You're naturally good at it. You don't need to take a class or get any credentials. You're just able to do something because it beautifully aligns with your soul frequency and your natural skill set. And so it feels like this particular Neptune and Aries cycle is one where we are made to move forward on our own individual journeys, to embody more of our spiritual practices and beliefs, to become more conscious at a whole new level that also influences the collective energy stream. Now, Neptune in Aries is not acting alone because this energy is working beautifully with Uranus in Gemini and Pluto in Aquarius, creating what is called a minor grand trine as all three outer planets work harmoniously together to move you forward. And this Neptune in Aries is at the apex of this energy, meaning Uranus in Gemini trines it on one side, Pluto in Aquarius trines it on the other, and it's forming what I'm calling a cosmic arrow to move you forward. And so there's something very important about this Neptune in Aries right now that we're meant to silently feel into and trust. We are initiating something that our souls agreed to start in this lifetime. There's a part of you that is timed to come alive right now, that is ready to be birthed and to flourish. And so that can bring about peace of mind, knowing that it is all on time and that it's aligned with what is occurring here in 2026 for you. And that it's also meant to move you forward in ways that your soul wanted to experience in this lifetime. So that's why looking back on any of these previous Neptune and Aries cycles could be fascinating, because it could show you the patterns or themes that you've been in that now you're beginning anew, that now are coming to the forefront for you to make a new choice, a new option, a new action, to be more conscious and intentional with what you're choosing, and to also be more empowered that this is the lifetime where I do this differently, or I try this in a new way. This is the lifetime where I move forward with greater trust in my intuition, in my spirituality, in my creative self. All the above, whatever you feel is correct for you is the answer. And Neptune in Aries is reminding you that you are also probably even more merged with your higher self than you may even know. That's because Neptune does represent our higher self and our own divine guidance. And in Aries, it brings it into the body and it brings it into the actions we take that move us forward. So for example, if you are seeking courage, if you are seeking to be brave or to start something new, ask your higher self for that energy and that influence. Ask for support from the divine, and that energy will flow through and assist you in taking those next steps, in being courageous or beginning something that is soul-led. In other words, you're not doing it alone, but you are the human vessel through which the divine moves and through which the energy seeks to be expressed. I believe this Neptune in Aries is becoming even more important now that Saturn has moved away from it, and there is this whole new zest or outlet of fire that can be burning. Neptune in Aries can also support you in transmutation. Anything you need to transmute evolve or surrender to. You bring it into that fiery flame of Neptune and Aries, and ideally it takes you higher. It elevates you above the mundane and above the physical world and gives you that higher vantage point to trust and embody. So this can be wonderful for forward movement, for soul growth, for spiritual healing. This can be fantastic for moving you into those next level dreams that you want to experience in this lifetime. And I say all that because of how this Neptune in Aries has the support of Uranus in Gemini and Pluto in Aquarius. Now, Uranus is going to enter Gemini April 25th. So as I record this on April 13th, Uranus is not in Gemini, but it's coming through again. And it's definitely going to activate faster moving, accelerated manifestations when it does so. Now, I cover all of this and more in one of my online programs, Manifesting with the Minor Grand Trine, which is where you learn how this energy is working in your astrology chart. And this is a very extensive program that I'm adding even more information to every year, because this energy of Neptune and Aries working with Uranus and Gemini and Pluto and Aquarius lasts into 2029. Yes, it's a multi-year dynamic that is taking us into these new experiences of ourselves, of our lives, and of the world. And so when you see what's going on in your chart, you're able to identify it and understand this is my cosmic arrow pointing me forward. This is where these energies are showing up in my chart and what I need to know about them more specifically. The energy is also going to become more amplified when Jupiter enters Leo in July of 2026, which will definitely bring in a surge of bold, confident energy, very creative and self-expressive, perhaps even opening up a whole new area of life for you to pursue. That's also covered in the program here, plus more of what the outer planets are moving through and their ongoing aspects. So I wanted to mention that because Neptune in Aries is influential. It's very important right now, and it's going to be changing the world, changing how we have our human experiences. But the more that you understand how it's working with you, the more you are empowered in your choices, your actions, and your light. So I'm going to put that program in the podcast description, as well as the code for 30% off if you would like to dive into this material even deeper and look at what is coming up for you during these first Neptune and Aries years. Essentially, it's important to know that you're ready to start something that your soul said yes to, that your soul wanted to begin in this lifetime. It is divinely guided, it is divinely timed, and you might feel that there's even more support coming through that is assisting you. So yay for that. We love that. We can use more of that. But I hope this also brings about that peace of mind that beginnings are imminent, and now is the time to deeply trust what you are guided to begin. And perhaps even these previous historical periods activated a particular memory or cellular level recall that gives you a hint as to what you're here to experience and start. And of course, the cycles go back even further, since Neptune was in Aries every 165 years. So you could go back to the 14th century or the 13th century if any of those call to you. And I would bet that as you do so, if you did so, the theme that would emerge would be around your own religious practices and spirituality, since that is always prominent during these Neptune and Aries years. So, as always, thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon on Wednesday, where we will discuss the weekly astrology energies of our times. So, wishing you a beautiful day ahead, as well as beautiful support to anything that you are starting now. Take good care, and I'll see you back here soon.